Can you describe why it's so important for us to marry blood work with DNA?
I was looking at my dad's labs from the doctors, and his cholesterol it's so much better. And his diet is so much worse than mine.
Oh, that's been my dream. I used to say to my mum like years ago, like 10 years ago, I'm like, Mum, how does the Queen stay so healthy? And she used to say to me, well, because I'm like, why in the royal family, how are they always living to like 100 and beyond? And she's like, honey, they've probably got like a board of directors.
Yes.
And I used to think, even 20 years ago, I used to think, that's my dream. Like I was thinking about this years and years ago. Yeah, that's like the ultimate, right?
It is. And that would be, and you reminded me, I once worked with this company that did exactly that for high net worth cancer patients. They literally, these are people that had kind of very rare cancers, right? And also a lot of money, which is important here. And they would assemble these tumor boards of doctors from all over the world. They would fly them in, and then we would do kind of like a research grade analysis of their RNA, which wasn't normally done at that time, and it blew my mind.
Does that company still exist?
I think that they have morphed. I don't think that they do that program anymore, but I mean, obviously you have to be super wealthy to afford that, right?
I know.
So that's great, but not everybody can afford that.
Obviously.
So really, like, what I've tried to do my whole career is to take something amazing like that and build a technology that can try to think like that group, right? Try to do that at scale for less money, right? And that's essentially what Inside Tracker is trying to do with the system and the platform that we have, that I cannot take credit for building. I only got there a year and a half ago. So it was built by founder Gil Blander and a lot of other like really wonderful, fantastic scientists along the way that built a very beautiful system to be able to kind of take all of that complex data and come out with interpretations on the other end of it.
Can you describe why it's so important for us to marry blood work with DNA? Because from my understanding, and this is what I see, at Neuro Athletics, if we have somebody and they've got, let's just say we just do blood work, and we see that our 42-year-old male has an elevated homocysteine, and by elevated, I'm saying maybe he's coming back with a reading of 12. In our books, that's elevated to us. We try and actually get it below 8. But let's just say we work on, and by the way, for everybody listening, it's just a protein that builds up, and it can be correlated with cardiovascular disease and dementia. So let's just say this just does not, we try and, we get him to take B vitamins, for example, to bring it down, and nothing is happening, but we still don't know. We can then get his DNA checked, and if he has the MTFHR gene, did I say it right? Then we know, okay, there is a reason why his homocysteine is very high. That's one reason why I believe, we need to marry the two. But can you describe to me why it's just so important to include both of them?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that you're doing that for, for your client. It makes a lot of sense, right? You want to understand, what are you bringing to the table? That might mean we take VO2 max, for example. The upper end of your VO2 max is probably in part designated by your genetics. Some people are just going to have a better VO2 max than somebody else, even given all of the same exposures, right? Because their genes create a system that does so, right? That doesn't mean that you can't change your VO2 max if yours is low, but it does mean that eventually you may hit a ceiling somewhere down the line. I think another example, and this is rather personal to me, but my cholesterol's always been kind of high ever since I was in my early 20s, right? Oh, that like borderline high, And then you walk around and you talk to people, and they're like, yeah, my cholesterol's like 80. Wow. How? I have no concept of that.
And just to be clear, when you say your cholesterol has been high, you're talking specifically LDL.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Yes, specifically my LDL cholesterol has always been in that kind of borderline high range and pretty resistant to lifestyle changes, actually. But it kind of blew my mind. So recently I was looking at my dad's labs from the doctors, and his cholesterol it's so much better. Like all of his cholesterol parameters, like HDL and LDL and triglycerides. Actually, triglycerides are about the same. And his diet is so much worse than mine. And, you know, I just was like, I don't think that this is all me, right? I don't think it's all the choices that I'm making. And, you know, my mom always had high cholesterol. My grandmother always had high cholesterol. My grandfather had. So I inherited my mom's pattern of cholesterol synthesis, production, you know, metabolism, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know exactly what it is. But if you look at my DNA, you know, there are little secrets in there that say, yeah, you know, you are at an elevated risk of having high cholesterol. And why did that make me feel better? It made me feel better because I went on a statin then. I was like, okay, I can't eat my way out of this problem. I cannot exercise my way out of this problem. I know that I am really going to benefit from taking a medication in this case. And it helped me kind of like release actually a lot of guilt, like, oh, I should be working harder. I should lower my saturated fat intake. And, you know, sure, I should do all of those things, but I knew that in order to really dramatically change it, I'd have to make some very unpleasant lifestyle changes that I didn't want to do and weren't even necessarily something that I could sustain for the rest of my life. So it was good to know that it, you know, in my case, my high cholesterol, my high LDL cholesterol was due in part, and my elevated ApoB, I should say, is due in part to genetics.
Yes.
And not all of it, but some of it. So it's good to know that, because we don't want somebody bashing their head against the wall trying to do something that frankly it's not going to pan out for them. At the same time, let's say I did not have an elevated risk of having elevated LDL cholesterol. Let's say that was the case. Then I would know more concretely that dietary and lifestyle interventions
absolutely
would be more pliable for me.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that we're finding across our board is stress is extremely correlated with LDL, which you never think. You're like, okay, let's just cut the fat. Really, people are, let's just cut the fat. We know that exercise interventions don't really have an effect on, you know, serum levels. So it's like, can we please just manage the stress in your life? How
do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're following me on Instagram, you probably know what has occurred in my apartment right now. And I'll tell you because you may not be following me. I recently got a cold plunge in my apartment.
Fun.
It was not meant to be in my apartment. It was meant to be outside. I have a beautiful balcony. And management was like, yeah, that's not going outside on the balcony. I'm like, all right, next to the couch it goes. So it now is like a water feature in my living room. So now I'm forced to have a cold bath every single day because it's there. So, you know, that's really doing a lot for my, I would say, stress, or it's doing a lot for my cortisol and inflammation, if you will. Yeah.
I love it.
So I'm directly impacting stress from the cold standpoint.